from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. If you want to join the program tonight, happy Friday, by the way. It's 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez. Now, there is some breaking news about 5 hours ago, there was a massacre in Moscow. The Islamic State is claiming responsibility for killing 60 people. There was a shooting at a concert hall. We have some audio from what occurred. Listen to this. You can hear the gunshots going off. Russia's health ministry released a list of 145 people being injured. That's according to the Associated Press. The United States collected intelligence that the Islamic State, Islamic State Khorasan. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but they go by ISIS-K. A branch in Afghanistan has been planning the attack on Russia's capital city in Moscow. Now, look, I don't know if this is a false flag. I don't know if it's really the Russians, really the ISIS-K. I don't know any of this stuff. What I do know is if what we have is true right now, that ISIS-K is back and they're planning attacks on Putin, you got nobody to blame but Joe Biden for emboldening them the way he did and not leaving them weaker but leaving them stronger when we pulled out as disastrously as we did. Despite what some of the folks that even come on this program will say, I think that was a mistake to do it as quickly, as sloppily as they did. Anyway, I want to bring in former deputy NATO representative for the United States, your retired Air Force General Blaine Holt, who's going to be with us briefly just to give us an update on what's going on. General.
Pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on short notice. I'm sure you had a beautiful Friday evening planned. And when you heard about these terrorists, and I appreciate you answering our call, I think it's horrible that this is happening. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are speculating, is this really happening? Is it really ISIS? Is it really somebody else trying to tip the balance of power in that region? What say you?
Yeah, so the thing that we shouldn't do is come to any conclusions yet about who have conducted this horrific attack on civilians, just an immense loss of life. There are so many things, even with the ISIS declaration that they did it, there are so many things that don't add up. This is not signature ISIS-K stuff, and there's a variety of reasons I could say that that's true. I'm not going to get into them here, but the other part is you've got elements inside the Ministry of Defense in Ukraine that are trying to take credit for it now, whereas they were denying it vehemently earlier. So there's so much to unpack here, because if you go back 4 weeks, you had Victoria Nuland on TV saying, well, in the future, Russia can expect, and even Moscow can expect, some asymmetric attacks. You know, what was she getting at? There are a variety of reasons that you could see a false flag here, because I think we're in the early hours of Russia mounting a massive offensive against Ukraine, and a terrorist attack in Moscow certainly unifies the Russians in their cause. And so we don't know enough yet. And what I'm really concerned about is we may never really learn the truth of what happened today.
Right. Do we ever, General? Right. Things like this happen all the time. They're weird. They don't add up. And it just seems odd. The reality is, and again, I hate to put my tinfoil hat on with you, but the reality is there is a reality of people creating false flag attacks and to try to pin this on them and to try to change the chessboard, if you will. And we never really know about that, right? That's just how things are done from various intelligence agency perspectives. It's always been done that way, and I think we're always in the dark about it. And we might be in a little bit more of the know now, or at least speculate on more of it now than we might have in the past. But the reality is that's how it goes. What do you think this does with that particular region? Does Russia become more aggressive towards Ukraine? Does Russia, does this kind of split their focus on attacking Ukraine and also now trying to go after ISIS?
Yeah, so if this really was an ISIS hit, then what I would expect next to happen is that there'll be defense consultations between the Kremlin and Tehran. Iran is a natural enemy of ISIS, and they just had the recent terrorist attack in Kerman about 2 months, January 5th, I think it was. So you probably see some sort of operation concocted that way, and you may anyway. But what I see Russia doing now after the Putin election, or so-called election, is behind us. You see now a Russia that's resolute about getting the Ukraine piece wrapped up. The attacks on Ukraine have really been up-tempoed. We have not seen this level of missile activity in the cities of Ukraine yet. This is a first. Kharkiv, the northeastern city near Russia, they lost that in the early part of the war, the Russians did, and now it looks like they're taking it back. They just crashed the dam, took down all the lights, 1.2 million without any kind of power. Wow. And it does look like the Russians are getting on the offensive now. They're using heavier weapons as well. They were using 500 to 1,500-pound bombs. Now they're using 3,000-pound ordnance on these missiles that they're flying with. So I think I see an offensive here. Time will bear that out, whether I'm right or wrong. But militarily, it certainly looks like that.
Well, we're going to be taking the weekend off, but certainly I'm sure they won't. So, General, we're going to ask that you come back with us on Monday and give us a really a little bit more full version of your analysis on what's going on once we have a little bit more facts. And, folks, again, you heard it here first. General Holt saying don't rush to any conclusions. And it doesn't seem like ISIS-K, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not. General, in the minute or so that we have remaining, what's your final thought on this whole situation?
We're getting very close to a new level of this war, which could spawn into the connecting the dots thing that you and I have talked about for a long time. We talk about World War III. What does that feel like? This is what that could feel like in an approach to that, because on the other side, you see Macron and some other hawks inside of Europe calling for NATO troops inside of Ukraine. And honestly, that is the Rubicon. If we go to that place, then we better get prepared for a global conflict.
Right, because I would imagine that Putin's not going to say, okay, great, if you got NATO troops inside Ukraine, right, then, okay, I'm going to go home and forget it, guys. You guys got me. Yeah. Right? He's going to double
not
down, and the captain goes down with the ship. General Blaine Holt, former deputy representative to NATO for the United States, retired Air Force general. Sir, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for being with us tonight.
Oh, it's my honor. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yes, sir. Talk to you Monday. Have a great weekend. God bless.
Yes, sir.
All right, folks, we continue with the rest of our conversations and the rest of the news of the day straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. Rich Valdez live with you till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And if you want to join the national conversation, give us a call. We're live all night, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And you just heard General Blaine Holt, retired Air Force general, former deputy representative from the United States to NATO, discussing what's going on with this crazy situation that just erupted in Moscow. ISIS-K claiming a responsibility for killing 60 people, injuring 140 some odd people additionally. And we're going to keep you up to speed on that. One of the cool things about being on the air late at night is that as things break, you're able to bring it and bring it in real time because we are live. We tend not to do a lot of pre-taping here, and we're live every night. So that's a real blessing. And we will keep you up to speed on that. But there's additional things I want to get into. On Monday, you've got President Trump, who's going to have a showdown, right? It's a showdown with respect to paying this $454 million fine that they want him to pay. It's absolutely outrageous. And we'll keep you up to speed on that as well as we move forward. But in keeping you up to speed with what's going on, part of what I want to do is talk about stories that I think matter, right? And one of the stories that matters to me is always the story of the underdog story, right? Where somebody's, where they think you're down, they think you're out, but then you come from behind and boom, you win. And Tim Murtaugh has a story like that. He was the communications director for Trump's 2020 campaign, and he's the founder of Line Drive Public Affairs. He's also the author of a new book called Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump Campaign. He's also the co-host of the Line Drive podcast, and he's with us now. Tim Murtaugh, welcome.
Rich, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's good to be with you.
You bet. So, Tim, you know, I'm looking at your book, and I wish you much success with it. I hope everybody buys 2 copies, one for themselves and one to give away. But
well, thank you.
Writing a book like this, I would suspect, is not easy, right? This isn't a book about why you should vote for Trump, why America's going down the tubes, why this or why that. This is really a story of you, right? This is a story of giving it all you got to make it count. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. And it's called Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, and it comes out on April 2nd. You can pre-order it on Amazon right now, but it will be released on April 2nd. And, you know, it's something that I talked about writing for a while. I struggled with alcoholism, really pretty severe alcoholism, for decades while I was working, and I was a working professional the whole time in campaign communications. That's what I did. I did political campaigns. And my drinking just got worse and worse and worse, and it interfered with every aspect of my life. I kept getting fired from jobs. I got arrested, drunk in public, those sorts of public intoxication, those sorts of things. And then I got a couple of DUIs as well. I did 5 days in jail for the first one. I did 10 days in jail for the second one. And my life was just absolutely out of control, And then it really came to a head, and I was finally able, and we'll have a long time to have this conversation, but I was finally able to get clean and get sober. But it took a long time. And then, so in the book, I tell that story, my struggle to get through it. And then the other half of the book is my life in politics, because, you know, less than 4 years after waking up in the Fairfax County, Virginia drunk tank, less than 4 years later, I was flying on Air Force One with the President of the United States. And so it's a pretty good comeback story. And I wrote it because when I was in rehab, and I went to rehab 5 times, I always read the books that were written by people about their own experiences, and they helped me. And that's what I wanted to write. And, you know, if it helps one person not pick up a drink for 10 minutes, then it was worth it.
Amen to that, brother. I appreciate your candor and your honesty and being vulnerable here with our audience, because I think you're not alone. And in dealing with that, a lot of people deal with these types of things, and I've spoken with a number of people who've dealt with that. Let's talk a little bit about the beginning of the story. How do you end up in political campaign consulting? Is this when you were a little kid where you're like, man, I can't wait to just work on campaigns?
No, that's not exactly the way it happened. You know, I wanted to play shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but that didn't work out. My grandfather was in baseball. His name was Danny Murtaugh. He was the manager of the Pirates for a long time and won the World Series a couple times.
How long?
And my father,
Clemente's time?
Oh yeah, Clemente was the best player he ever had. I would say. Cool. But the World Series he won, two World Series he won. The first one was in 1960, famous Bill Mazeroski home run in the bottom of the ninth of Game 7 to beat the Yankees, and then 1971 beating the 4 20-game winners from the Baltimore Orioles in 71. So I grew up in a baseball family, and I wanted to play for the Pirates, but that wasn't going to work out. My dad played minor league baseball up to AAA, and so the talent level gets watered down a little bit by generation in my family. So I went to school, but my high school had a radio station. I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had a little dinky local radio station, but I got bitten by the broadcasting bug. You can understand that, I imagine.
Love that. Yeah.
And so by the time I got to college, I wanted to do baseball play-by-play. And I became a finalist for a job in Oregon and then didn't get it and I took a job doing news in Virginia, and that translated to a TV station later on. I was on TV in Charlottesville and in Richmond, and I got to covering politics, and I was the reporter covering politics. And then I got to know a bunch of the players in the Virginia political circles, and at one point I jumped the fence. And so in 1999, instead of covering politics, I became a participant in politics. And that was 25 years ago now. And it's a decision I've never regretted. And, I really, really enjoy politics. It gives me a chance to pursue real strong, important ideas that I agree with and I believe in. And I think it's my way to contribute to what goes on in this country. That's the way I look at it.
Folks, we're on with Tim Murtaugh. He is the author of the book, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump Campaign. And I want you to just, I guess, maybe set up what we're going to talk about next, which is, I think you laid out part one pretty well. You set yourself up. You wanted to be a baseball player. It sounds pretty standard, right? Most people everybody wants to be a sports superstar, and you got closer than most, I think, with the play-by-play opportunity, whether you got it or not, you got close enough. It's hard to get into radio, even harder to get into broadcasting like that. And you're there and you get into political consulting, which is not a bad gig. I think personally, it's a young man's game, right? Because you go to the bar after everything, it's a kind of fast-paced thing. And you're there and you're doing it and you're on the rise, you're on the come up. So when we come back, I want to get into the thick of it of, how you get the experience you get that eventually gets you on the winning team, right? The campaign that eventually ends up in the White House. And I think that's going to be an interesting turn of events. Folks, Tim Murtaugh, former Trump communications director for the 2020 campaign. He's the founder of Line Drive Public Affairs, and he's the author of the book, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump Campaign. Tim Murtaugh, in the couple of seconds that we have remaining before the music kicks in, let everybody know how they can pre-order the book. Where do they go?
It's available right now on Amazon.com or other major retailers. And it comes out on April 2nd, but you can pre-order it right now. If you go to Amazon.com, you just search for either my name, which is Tim Murtaugh, Murtaugh, or search for the title, which is probably easier to remember, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It. And that'll pop right up, and it's available in hardback and Kindle right now.
All right, folks, make sure you grab that. Now, Tim Murtaugh, music's kicking in any second. I want to get, a quick trivia question for you. There's the music, but I will get it. I wanted to know, I've spoken with a few people who've flown around Air Force or Trump Force One, and they've commented on the cuisine. So I wanted to get your take on what your thoughts were on the cuisine aboard Trump Force One. Folks, we're coming right back with Tim Murtaugh. Of course, with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
With Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with Tim Murtaugh. He was the communications director for Donald Trump's 2020 campaign, and he's got a brand new book called Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump Campaign. This is a really interesting story because I think it's something that everybody listening has dealt with, whether they know somebody who's gone through it or they've gone through it themselves. And it's always encouraging to hear a story where somebody comes out on the winning side. Tim Murtaugh, you told us about your dreams of becoming a Pittsburgh Pirate. Didn't happen. You don't get to be Clemente. You don't get to be a play-by-play announcer. So you get into political consulting as a campaign operative. Let's take it from there.
Yeah, I didn't even get to be Mario Mendoza, if that means anything to you or to your audience. So, I mean, I got out of reporting. I started working in politics back in 1999. And actually, the first job that I had in politics, I got hired as more sort of a tryout at the state Republican Party in Virginia. And the fellow who hired me was a guy by the name of Chris LaCivita. And if you're following current events, you may know that Chris LaCivita is the co-campaign manager now of the Donald Trump 2024 election. So my old friend Chris has landed in the captain's chair on the former President Trump's attempt to get back to the White House. So that was 1999. I worked on a guy's Senate race called George Allen. He had been the governor of Virginia. And when people talk about how they got into politics, a lot of people on the Republican side talk about how Ronald Reagan enticed them to get involved in politics. And I loved Ronald Reagan. He was the president of my formative years when I was younger. But for me, my own personal Ronald Reagan, the guy who inspired me to get involved, was George Allen. He was the governor of Virginia, solid conservative, really strong guy, ran for the U.S. Senate in 2001, and I was his press secretary on that race. And I bounced around. I did a lot of different campaigns, state races, federal races for Congress, for Senate, for governor. And I did some time at the national committees, Republican National Committee, Republican Governors Association, and different Senate races around the country, different things. And then I landed on Capitol Hill, worked on Capitol Hill for a few years, and that's where my drinking really, really got worse. And I should have been fired from that job, but a congressman by the name of Lou Barletta from Pennsylvania actually didn't want to give up on me and didn't want to fire me. Wanted me to get help. And he helped an awful lot. And so on May 16th, 2015 is the day I took my last drink. And it's because I got arrested that day and was threatened, was facing like 80 days in jail, that I had suspended time hanging over my head for my second DUI. And if I didn't straighten out right then, I was going to go to jail for a good long time. And forget about losing my job. I would have lost my career. I would have lost my new wife. My family was about fed up with me. It would all have come to an end. But I managed to get straightened out. I never looked back. I never took another drink. I got a job in the Trump administration. I was the communications director for Sonny Perdue, who was the Secretary of Agriculture. And 2 years into that, I got a phone call from an old friend of mine from a different campaign from years prior who said, "Have you given any chance to working for the re-elect?" Which means the re-election campaign, of course.
Sure.
And I said, sure. And I went in and met with Brad Parscale and told him all about my history, how I'd had a bunch of different arrests and a couple of DUIs, and that if anybody looked into it, they would find it. And Brad said, the president appreciates a good comeback story. He likes stories of redemption, and he understands alcoholism. He himself has never taken a drink, but he blames alcohol for the death of his brother at a very young age. And so he has never taken a drink himself. And that's how I ended up on the Trump campaign. It's a winding path, and everybody sort of takes their own path to get there. But if you're in the business of political communications, being the communications director for the re-election of the president of the United States, that's about the top of the mountain. And I'm proud to say that I got there.
How did you overcome the big deal, right? You mentioned that you'd struggled with alcoholism for quite a while, and so many people do. And I mean, when you tell this story, it's, if I take you out of the equation, I know a million people, who work in campaigns, and this is all they do after work is they go to the bar, right? That's part of the culture. So, how did you get away from that, being in a profession like that?
Well, I had to be shocked out of drinking every single day. The fact that I was on probation, here's how it happened. I was on probation for my second DUI, and I had 80 days of my sentence suspended, hanging over my head. And if I got in any trouble over the course of 3 years of my probation, that it was alcohol related, I was going to go to jail and serve those 80 days. And I got arrested for drunk in public while I was on probation. And so I woke up in jail. This is how the book starts. I woke up in jail. And I thought to myself, oh boy, I've really done it. Now I'm gonna lose everything if I get convicted of this, whatever it was, drunk in public or public intoxication. And so I got a lawyer, and he said, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go do public service. You're gonna go have the interlock system put on your car. You're going to go to a slew of AA meetings, get people to sign the list. You're going to go to rehab again. You're going to do all these things. And then we're going to go to court and ask the judge to show you mercy and not convict you of that. No one should go to jail for 3 months for public intoxication. And I said, well, I'll try. And so I worked really hard and went to court, and they agreed to not prosecute the case if I kept my nose clean and never darkened the inside of a courtroom again during that probationary period. And I did not. And that's the way that I kicked it. And so you're right. Washington in particular is a really big drinking town. Politics is a really big drinking profession. And so, I just got to a point where it's like when I walk past a plate of donuts or something, I was able to tell myself, that's not me. I don't eat that donut. I don't drink that beer. I just don't do that. It is a physical addiction. And at first that's really hard to get away from. And then it becomes an addiction of other kinds, just a behavior and things that are familiar. And then all those things are really, really difficult. But when I was faced with the ruination of everything, lost job, lost career, lost wife, lost family, everything, unless I quit, that's what did it. May 16th, 2015, it's coming up on 9 years, and I have never looked back.
What a great story. Now,
I would want to point out, Rich, can I say one thing here? I want to point out that if people read this book, it's about half about politics and my life in politics, mostly about the Trump 2020 campaign. But the other half is my struggle, the lifelong struggle. And that's the more interesting part, I think, to a lot of people. And it's not a how-to book. Nobody's going to pick this up and say, oh, here is how I'm able to stop drinking. And no one can tell anyone else how. All I can do is relate how I got through it. And I think if I can succeed and I can manage to quit drinking, then anyone can. And in writing this book helped me stay sober. I know that I'm one bad decision away from starting drinking all over again. And like when I go to parties now or go to an event, people say, hey, do you want to drink? And my answer always is, you don't have enough alcohol here for me. I don't care how much you got, it's not enough. So I'm not going to have any because you don't have enough. Because once I start one, it never stops. And I know there are a lot of people who can appreciate that story and who identify with it. And that's who I wrote this book for.
Outstanding. Tim Murtaugh, former Trump campaign communications director in the 2020 campaign, author of the book Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump campaign. Tim Murtaugh, when we come back, I got a couple of follow-up questions because I agree with you. People, again, it doesn't compare in any way. People always ask me, how did you make it in radio? And I'm like, I can tell you my story. I don't know if that's going to help you make it, right? Everybody has a different path. But ultimately, I think while everybody has a different path, when it comes to addictions, the demons are very familiar from one person to the next. So I'd love you to get into a little bit of just, how you stay inspired and how you found that strength. And then we'll talk a little politics when we come back. Folks, we're on with Tim Murtaugh. Again, the book, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump campaign.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation with Tim Murtaugh, and we left off with his story of how he beat addiction and how he's plugging away one day at a time. Again, his book, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, My Escape from Addiction and a Shot at Redemption on the Trump campaign. Tim Murtaugh, for everybody that's listening, and again, I know it's not a how-to book, but what was it for you? How do you manage to find that inner strength? Was it 12 steps? Was it Jesus? How do you get from 1 minute to the next when you're battling the urge?
Well, at the very beginning, it really truly was 1 minute to the next. People say one day at a time, and that's true. But for me, it was little chunks of the day at a time. I did a lot of, you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. That's a phrase that I knew very well. And so I used to drink first thing in the morning. It would be right sometimes before my feet even hit the floor, would have the first one because you needed
but
that.
in reality, that's
to,
because when you're an addict, you get shaky and you kind of need it to be
Right.
straight, right?
Yeah, it was terrible. Yes, terrible. Needed that just to settle down to be able to go and function in somewhat of a normal fashion. So when I had quit, it was a struggle and it was a challenge to get ready to leave the home to go to work in the morning without having had a drink first. And then can you drive from home to work without stopping to buy a bottle? And then while I'm at work on Capitol Hill, there are bars and restaurants that are open. Some of them open. I don't know what time they opened the doors, but they were open early enough for me to go in and have a couple of screwdrivers before I went to work on Capitol Hill. So it was taking little chunks of the day, getting from bed to out the door without drinking, from the door to work without drinking, making it to lunch without drinking, and then at the end of the day, driving home without stopping at a liquor store to pick up a bottle. I broke the day into little chunks until I was able to do it a little more smoothly on my own with that crutch. I went to a ton of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, a ton. And I relied very heavily on something that's very simple, the Serenity Prayer. I would say that over and over and over again during the course of the day. Anytime I felt even the slightest bit of challenge or a little twinge of wanting to take a drink, I would stop and say the Serenity Prayer. It takes about 20 seconds, and it would really help me. It would really help me.
Now, I appreciate that. And for anybody who doesn't know, this Serenity Prayer works for a lot of things. It's not just for alcoholism, but ultimately, I think if you're just you deal. For me, it's road rage, right? I can tend to lose it behind the wheel, and I often use the Serenity Prayer just to remind myself, this isn't the day to rip somebody out of their car.
That's right. It's a good way to just reset. Like stop. Like my son, and today the way I don't drink is I have two little boys, and I look at them, and they're 5 years old and 7 years old. We just had a great night tonight, the first night of machine pitch Little League, one step above T-ball, right? These little kids have never seen their father take a drink, and I want to keep it that way.
Amen to that. Now, a quick little bit of trivia. I've talked to a couple of folks that have been on Trump Force One, and I have not. But they were telling me how they got on the plane, and 45 tells them that no, I'll give you a ride. Don't worry, we could drop you off, and we're having lunch. And they bring out these golden domes with food beneath it, and they're thinking, wonder what it is. Is it like a ribeye? Like, what are we going to have? And they were shocked at what actually was under there. Have you been on Trump Force One, and have you had lunch on the plane?
Do you know, when I worked for President Trump, he was already the president. And so I guess I did fly on his plane, but and it had the words Force One in it, but it was not Trump Force One, it was Air Force One. So I have flown on Air Force One with President Trump, but I had never been on his own private plane, Trump Force One. But I can take a guess as to what the cuisine is that your friends would be describing.
What do you think it was?
That dome. Well, it could be, there's a good chance it would be McDonald's, or it could be KFC, or it could be...
It was McDonald's. They were Big Macs.
Yeah.
They said they opened up these gold domes. Or some other local
cuisine. What's that? Yeah. That's what he likes, he was mocked mercilessly when he was the president, when he had the national, was it Clemson or someone, had the national championship football team over at the White House, and he had a stack of cheeseburgers all the way up to the ceiling in the East Room. That's what he served. I think it was Clemson. But those are his tastes. He loves it. He loves his Diet Coke.
Me too. I'm more of a Diet Pepsi guy, but still. All right, Tim Murtaugh, let everybody know how they could follow you and keep up to speed with the amazing work that you're doing.
Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate this opportunity, Rich. It's been great. First of all, you can find my book, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It: My Escape from Addiction and Shot at Redemption on the Trump Campaign. You can find that on Amazon. Search for the title, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, or by my name, Tim Murtaugh, Murtaugh, or on Twitter, and where you can find me at Tim Murtaugh. And then the Line Drive podcast. I hope people will find that on Rumble or Apple or Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. The Line Drive podcast, I do that with Hogan Gidley, who's another former Trump campaign and deputy press secretary at the White House, and Sonny Joy Nelson, one of my other colleagues from the Trump 2020 campaign, who's also working on the 2024 campaign. So it's a good crew, and we talk about, of course, current events every single week. We have some top-notch A-list political guests, and it's a good show. I encourage people to tune in, and I appreciate the chance to plug that as well. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, you bet, brother. I wish you much success with it. I know this game isn't easy, and really Godspeed to you. And are you working on the campaign now? Are you going to be getting back in the groove? What's the future look like for you?
Well, I certainly know a lot of the folks who are on that, and I am not currently doing any work for the campaign. But as you said, it's a younger man's game. I was communications director in 2020 for 24 months. That was the campaign that would not end, right? I mean, I worked into January of 2021. So 24 months, 2 years on that campaign. And let me tell you, it is it takes over your entire life. It is quite an undertaking to have a senior job on a presidential campaign for 2 years. And I think that's the younger man's game. I don't know if I will ever be full-time staff on any campaign, but I sure would love to help President Trump get reelected. I think he was an excellent president. I think he deserves another chance at the White House, and I will help in any way that he sees fit.
Outstanding. Folks, Tim Murtaugh, make sure you grab a copy of his book. I'm inspired, and I think you should get 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. The book, again, it's called Swing Hard in Case You Hit It, which I love. My escape and addiction and a shot at, my escape from addiction and a shot at redemption on the Trump campaign. Tim Murtaugh, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I really appreciate you opening up with us tonight.
Well, Rich, I appreciate it. Let me say real quick about the title, Swing Hard in Case You Hit It. It's what my dad used to say to me when I left the house to go to baseball practice. Swing hard in case you hit it. He thought he was being funny. But that's a good philosophy for life. Anything you're approaching, task, swing hard. If you hit it, you'll wish you had swung hard, right?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I love it. You never know. You might actually hit it. Tim Murtaugh, everybody. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we've got an amazing show for you tonight. I'm going to switch gears because, of course, we talked about the drama that's going on in Russia, right? A massacre, 60 people killed, I think 135 or 140 people injured. And we don't know who's responsible for it, despite ISIS-K taking responsibility for it. And we'll continue to monitor that as we move forward. But plenty of other headlines to discuss tonight, and we're going to get into some of them. But, on Fridays, I like to let my hair down. And in letting my hair down, figuratively speaking, of course, I like to talk about different topics that are somewhat off the beaten path. And one of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit are traditional gender roles. No, not like, for swimming and sports and athletes and things like that, but more so like what happened to the day where a dude, a man, would court a woman and, go pick her up at her house with some flowers, open the door for her, some real old school chivalrous gentleman type of thing. And offer to take her to dinner and offer to pay the bill. Apparently, some, I'm going to blame both the simping male for letting that tradition fall by the wayside, as I'm also going to blame the feminist female, right? That says, no, I can do, whatever you can do, I can do. Okay, great. Super. The reality is I think life is better when you let a man do what a man is supposed to do, and it's better when you let a woman do what a woman's supposed to do. Now, I know that probably got me into trouble, but hey, I'm a Gen Xer, and that's what I do. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to get into a couple of other really interesting topics that we have, like how to deal with people, right? What's the other, people say you got heads or tails. Well, our next guest says there's a third side to the coin, and that's how you simplify communications. So don't go anywhere. We've got an amazing show for you tonight. I am Rich Valdez, and we're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy Friday. We are getting into a lot of interesting topics tonight. Let me invite you to give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. If you want to chime in on anything we're talking about with our guests, you're welcome to call during this hour and even speak to the guest. How good is that? And I want to... Again, just to reiterate a couple of headlines that we talked about earlier. ISIS-K, which the K I can't pronounce, forgive me. I don't possess the level of intellectual rigor necessary for that K part. But they've claimed responsibility for the attack on the Moscow concert hall, killing 60 people, injuring 145, just shooting people seemingly randomly. And this is horrific to say the least. We'll learn more about how this unfolds and whether it was really ISIS-K or someone else trying to put the blame on ISIS-K to try to exacerbate the contentious situation that's already occurring in Ukraine and in that region, I should say, with Russia increasing their offensive on Ukraine. And we'll be getting into that on Monday as well, so make sure you're tuned in on Monday with the latest updates. But we try to keep you up to speed with everything that's going on in America at night, and that happened earlier this afternoon, right before the evening time. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. Now, the House of Representatives narrowly passed a $1.2 trillion spending bill to, as they say, avert a government shutdown. But in reality, it's to keep things going, right? They want to go along to get along. They're continuing to spend money. They're continuing to fund this, fund that, and fund the other. And as a result, some of the more conservative members of the House of Representatives are now in a tizzy, and they're saying, that's enough. We're getting rid of the Speaker. The way we got rid of McCarthy, we'll get rid of you too, Speaker Johnson. Marjorie Taylor Greene has filed a resolution to get rid of Speaker Johnson because of this spending deal. So there we have it. Now, Rep. Mike Gallagher, he has also announced an early retirement, narrowing the House GOP majority yet again. This might be, the Republicans might lose their majority in Congress from just Republicans leaving, right? From George Santos to Gallagher and others that have left in between. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Congress is now asking the Capitol Police Chief questions arising from a Blaze Media report. We'll get into that during Open Phone America. And Judge Arthur Engeron is given a quote-unquote independent monitor greater control over the Trump organization. Monday is the big day for that, so we'll be talking about the impact of that. Scheduled to be with us on Monday is one of President Trump's former attorneys. He's also known as America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. Pending, nothing pressing happens and they don't try to lock him up like they have in the past, he'll be with us on the Monday broadcast. But tonight I want to go in a different direction from some of the hard news and get into some of the softer things in life, some of the things that matter to so many of us, right? I think people oftentimes, they deal with a lot of things, right? And there's things that we don't know. Like there's an old saying that says, you don't know what you don't know. And oftentimes it's about being aware, right? You learn about things, you learn about yourself, self-awareness, you learn about other people, situational awareness, and this helps you and it improves things in every relationship that you have, whether it's the relationship with your girl or your spouse, your husband, your boss, your employees. Every relationship dynamic is different, but they all require communication. And simplifying communication is a big, important part of being successful in any relationship. Now, in the past, we've had psychotherapist and author Jill Robin Payne on to talk about her book, Bempathy. And she's got a new book coming out, called Bempathy, Simplify Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. That's coming out this week. And I'm really interested in hearing more about that. Jill Robin Payne, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rich. It's good to be back.
My pleasure. Now, there's a lot going on, and whenever I have you on, I always try to, go through social media and grab whatever clips I can find to make sure, we're giving you as much as we can give you, so you can answer all the questions as America's listening. But I want to play a clip of audio for you that I found on social media that talks about the importance of being attached, and this, I guess, is regarding attachment theory, with one's mother, and how one could potentially improve communications in that regard. Listen to this.
We know that it's really important to have secure attachment. What we also know from the research is that children who are insecurely attached, who have been precociously, prematurely separated from their mothers, either put in daycare or their mothers are, I could say their mothers are also physically there, but not emotionally present. Maybe they're depressed, maybe they're distracted, maybe they're angry and resentful, maybe they're absent for other reasons, mentally absent. You have to be there physically and emotionally. But insecure attachment has been correlated with mental illness later on in these attachment studies. So a child who's insecurely attached at 12 months, 80% of them are like insecurely attached 20 years later. And it's correlated to things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, and borderline personality disorder. What is an attachment disorder? Essentially, an attachment disorder is a coping mechanism. It's a strategy that a child chooses unconsciously to cope with the loss of their mother, what we call anaclitic depression. So when your mother isn't there and you're so vulnerable, then you dig deep inside your psyche to find some way to cope.
So I heard this and I thought, my goodness, is this a lot of hype? Is this the real deal? I know if my dad were alive, he would tell me, Dad, that's phony baloney. But I don't think it's phony baloney. I think there's just so many things that we don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, it's true on the attachment theory, because there's a couple of different ones, and you do want to have a secure attachment. A lot of us don't, because we come from families where however we perceive how we were treated is what is important to us. Our parents can do the best they can, but let's say that they were working and we might find them as absent. It's the way we perceive our attachment to be. And so this does affect us as we get older, but not just that. If you were raped, or if you had a wonderful parents and you had a horrific relationship with the opposite sex, or a partner during high school years, that's also going to affect your attachment. So what they're talking about is what I call people that are emotionally unavailable. And I talk about that in my Meeting People, It's Not a Game book. And I call it the yo-yo effect. There's a lot of people out there, Rich, now that have this, and it could be because of their parents. It could be because of the way they're now communicating with social media and not looking at people. And so what happens is they'll run after the person, and then that person will go, oh, great, this is great. This is so wonderful. And then after they run after that person and they get that person, then they freak out, and then they push them away. And then the other person will say, well, forget this. And then the other person goes away. And so then the person that's emotionally unavailable, or they may both be emotionally unavailable, will go back and try to get that person, and it keeps going back and forth. So I tell people the best way to tell if you have a unhealthy attachment is if you're doing that back and forth.
Well, how do you help these people?
Well, the first thing is you get them to be aware of it, because believe it or not, they will blame the other person. They think it's the other person's fault. And so we don't like to look at ourselves, Rich.
Yeah, I know I don't. I mean, I love looking at myself, but not to blame myself. That's for sure.
Right. Exactly. When my son was little, I'd always blame him for taking my car keys when I would be the one to lose them. So the first thing is to be right. The first thing is to be aware of it. And once you're aware of it, then we can work on it. And I try to get people, because if you're emotionally unavailable, you're comfortable in that situation. It's not saying that it's healthy. It's not saying that you'll like it. It's saying you're comfortable with it. And if there's a million people in the room, Rich, you will pick that person that is emotionally unavailable, or someone that is represents how you were raised, a parent figure. It's really wild. It's so innate in
because
you.
It's familiar.
Yeah. And so what I tell people that are like that and are emotionally unavailable, I tell them this, that if you are really sexually attracted to that person and you want to jump into bed with them that night, that's a big red flag for people that are emotionally unavailable, because they have all the negative characteristics that you really don't want. So these are ways that I deal with it. I'm sure other therapists do it differently. And by doing that and getting people to be more aware of what they really want and what doesn't work for them. So I'll have them write a list of all the relationships that they've had, and I'll have them put down the positive characteristics. And then on another sheet of paper, I have them put down the negative characteristics, have them write down on the positive sheet the opposite of those negative characteristics. They tear up the negative characteristics, and therefore they have the character or traits that they want in their mate, in their future mate. So these are some things that I do for them. Yeah.
Now,
and it
this
helps.
is something you lay out in which book?
And Meeting People, It's Not a Game, Your Path to Genuine Connections Through Empathy. So it's my Empathy collection. So everything is about, you have to empathize with yourself. You need to empathize with other people so that you can relate with them. And so this has a bunch of different ways on how to make friends. It has different ways to make partners. And once you have that relationship, what do you do with them? And it tells how to stay close and keep and maintain that relationship.
Jill Robin Payne, like always, you nail it. Very interesting. I heard that audio clip and it sounded alarming to me, but you made it sound so natural and normal, and like there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I hope everybody who heard that also enjoyed that. Folks, we're coming right back with Jill Robin Payne. We're going to learn about the third installment of the book in the Bempathy collection, Simplifying Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. And the first thing I thought there was heads and tails. I didn't know there was a third side, so I can't wait for you to break it down for us. Jill Robin Payne, stick with us. We're coming right back. And, of course, if you want to speak with our guest, you can. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, we continue our discussion with Jill Robin Payne, psychotherapist and author of the book, Bempathy, Simplify Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. Again, Bempathy is Jill Robin Payne's trademark, which is banter plus empathy, B-E-M-P-A-T-H-Y, Bempathy. Simplify communication by looking at the third side of the coin. Jill Robin Payne, what kind of coins are you using that have three sides?
Well, basically, I came up with that a long time ago. I was talking to a client, and I was saying to the client that there's two sides to a coin when we were talking about communication. They corrected me and said three sides. And I said, you're right. And so if you think about it, Rich, when you're talking to somebody, you're thinking your perception, right? They're thinking their perception, and you're, bantering back and forth. And there's another perception out there that's neither one of yours, And it's the one that's really hard to see. So sometimes we need to step back from that situation. And sometimes we might need a mediator to help us see that other side. Because when we get where we're very biased, it's hard to see that there's another side. If you look at a table and you look at a table from all different sides, that's how we need to look at situations. There's so many different perspectives. And so the book is really about stepping back and working to see not just the other person's view, but another view, and then come to some type of compromise and enjoy the conversation. And instead of talking at the person, talk with a person. So many times now, what do? We're just, I'm texting my opinion, you text your opinion. And so we're talking sort of at people instead of with people. So that's pretty much the difference. And then I have my 6 C's, which are really easy, and they're in all my 3 books. And first of all, you want to communicate, right? What are we doing? We're communicating. Okay, there you go. People don't realize that. I just had a client the other day that wore totally black all the time. We communicate with our clothes. We communicate with our facial expressions, and we need to be aware of what are our clothes telling people? What is our body telling people? Are we approachable? So when the first thing is you think of what are you communicating? You want to communicate some commonality so you can connect. And so once you do that and you are connected, both parties start feeling comfortable. That's the 4th C. And then once you feel comfortable, don't you feel more in control? And if you feel in control, then you're going to want to commit to more conversation. So that's sort of how my empathy goes. Those are the 6 C's, and the books go into more detail. And I have different things such as TP, which is not toilet paper, it's timing and position, right? And so I don't know where you live, but if you live in New York City and you're going down Main Street, you can just as easily hit all red lights as all green lights. And so it's timing and position. And if you don't have the right timing or the right position, no matter how nice you are or what you're going to say, it's just not going to follow through. So that's the first thing that people need to do.
Jill Robin Payne, we're down to about a minute and a half here, and I want to make sure people have a chance to get the book. Where do they go to get a copy of the book?
Well, they can get it on Amazon. I also have a free ebook for them to get a taste of empathy on my website. And it's Bempathy, Banter plus Empathy, Start Communicating Better Today. And so they can get a free ebook on jillrobinpayne.com, or they can go to Amazon and get all 3 Bempathy books that are out there.
Hold on a second. So you're giving out a free ebook at jillrobinpayne.com?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Folks, if you're listening right now, make sure you write that down at the Jill with 2 L's, Robin with an I, Payne, Payne.com, jillrobinpayne.com. Get the free ebook and buy the other 3. Get one for yourself and 1 to give away. So buy 2 copies. Don't be cheap. And Jill Robin Payne, thank you for being with us. I always appreciate our conversations.
Thank you, Rich. Bye.
You bet. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos and familia. We're going to continue this conversation. Part of what I want to talk about is an article I'm looking at. It says, when it comes to romance and courtship, young people, specifically women and men in heterosexual relationships, got to emphasize that nowadays, seem to be following the same dating rules their parents and older generations grew up learning. Contemporary research, popular culture, and conversations show that more than a dozen Americans suggest that a longstanding norm still holds true. Men tend to foot the bill more than women do on dates, and there seems to be an expectation that they should. In a paper published in 2023 in Psychological Reports, a peer-reviewed journal, Dr. Luo and a team of researchers surveyed 552 heterosexual college students in Wilmington, North Carolina, and asked them whether they expected men or women to pay for dates and whether they, as a man or a woman, typically paid more. So the researchers found that young men paid for all or most of the dates around 90% of the time, while women paid for only about 2%. They split around 8% of the time. And on subsequent dates, splitting the check was more common, though men still paid a majority of the time, while women rarely did. Nearly 80% of men expected that they would pay on the first date, while just over half of women, 55%, expected men to pay, which is probably not a bad thing. So it's 2024. What is the current proper etiquette for dating? Who pays, and is splitting the bill even appropriate anymore? I want to get to the bottom of this. And, of course, we're bringing in the host of the popular podcast, The Lovability Show with Jennifer Styers. She's a professional relationship coach and runs a boutique matchmaking service that has their own app. Jennifer Styers, welcome back.
I love being here and talking love and relationships with you.
Thank you. Likewise. Always a pleasure.
Yes, and you have kiddos this age, Gen Zs, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I have two of them.
Yeah.
I have an 18 and a 22. And I mean, but my children have been trained. I told them, you're not paying any bills, you're not paying for any dates, and you don't open any doors.
There you go. Good for you. These kids they really are so fiercely independent, especially, the women in that generation. And they have a strong mind. They're independent. But it's surprising that they did this story. Now, again, it depends on where they polled. But it shows that women, and men can vouch for this, women still want men to pay the bill. They still want them to take them on a date. They still want to be courted in that way. That may be the only way, but they still want to be courted in that way. And it's quite surprising.
Good. I'm glad. It's a pleasant surprise to me. I feel that, in this day and age where every third headline is, a man competing in women's sports or somebody else claiming to be the opposite sex. And again, I don't mean to be flippant about anybody dealing with that type of dysphoria, but that is the norm. And it's an alarmingly high number especially for Gen Z. And when you look at that and then you hear something like this, it's like, oh, it makes sense. And a lot of the research that I've seen, Jennifer Styers, just to throw this out there, is that the more liberal generation, I'm going to say, Gen X tends to be, which is my generation, we tend to be a little bit more traditional. The millennials are off the wall with how they've become liberal with this. But then it kind of comes back, is what I'm seeing, that Generation Z wants to get married. They appreciate gender roles. You have women saying, I just want a man to be a man, and I want to just, kind of let go and in that. And that's not something I've heard from traditional feminists that seem to permeate millennials.
You're absolutely right. It is interesting to see the shift coming back, with Gen Z, that they are trying to shift back to more traditional roles. Like you said, the millennials, they're separate bank accounts. They're not buying houses. They're not buying cars. There's like zero commitment. I think we saw years ago, a big spike in divorces and a lot of latchkey kids and a lot of kids not wanting to do that. What they were handed, they don't want to do that to their kids they don't want that in their life. So a lot of them were not choosing marriage. We are still seeing a little bit of that trend with Gen Z, with the marriage thing not being as important. But those millennials were waiting forever to get married. It was, 30s and such. But yeah, cool to see that a little bit of a tradition is coming back and swinging back in, and kids may be appreciating things a little more. You have two daughters. Girls these days too, they're more educated. In Gen Z, the women are more educated. The young ladies, I should say, usually have the higher percentage of college degrees, higher percentage of advanced degrees. So these women are, potentially, in possibly a bit better positions, making more money, and yet still have that traditional, want the guy to take the lead, which is awesome.
Amen to that. And I think it's important because there's still guys like me out there that, kind of just gravitate towards that. And it's like, if I don't get to do that, then what do I do? What am I here for? Right? What am I doing if I'm not doing that? So I think that's a very important step.
Can I vent, though? I want to vent.
Please.
So tell me when I have time to vent. Do I have time to vent right now?
Yeah. You've got a minute and a half.
Okay. So here's where I'm going to vent. And I'm that Gen X, and I am watching more and more men not open doors, wait for me. They'll wait for me to go open the door if we're walking up at the same time, and they'll walk in behind me. They're not opening car doors. I'm in Texas. So, in what is considered the South, it is astounding me where men's manners are going, and men will tell you that women are so fiercely independent that they get, scolded for opening a door for a woman, that she can do it herself. And, some of them are hearing this. It's confirmed. They are hearing it, but the majority aren't. But I'm amazed how men are becoming so complacent, Rich.
Well, I'm with you. I think that there are men that, thank God, I think I'm a little bit stubborn and hard to retrain. And
you are,
those things are real for me. But those that are, maybe a little younger and, who wants to get into an argument with a woman? Most people avoid it at all costs. Thankfully, I'm okay. I argue with everybody all day anyway. So I think it works out fine. But I think most guys are like, this isn't the hill for me to die on. If she's opening doors, open it for me. You're going to pull out my chair? Go right ahead. You paying the tab? Yeah, super. I think some guys are just not willing to have the fight. And again, there's a problem in that as well. I think that when you have these blurred lines, and I guess, some people are going to say I'm a this or I'm a that, but I think it's just, it makes sense. It really does make sense ultimately, because I think in logic, right, we're making arguments about things. When you take any argument to its most logical extreme, it has to still make sense. And if you're on a date and, it's why is the guy pulling out the chair? Why is the guy opening the door? Why is the guy picking up the tab? I think there's a supposition there that I believe that you're worth it, right? I believe that I should do these things. You're softer, more delicate. It's kind of my job. It's why I'm the one with the beard here. And when women try to take part of that role and men obfuscate and allow that to happen and say, all right, you know what? I'm going to acquiesce to what you're saying and I'm going to let you have that role. You have a real problem because you have a disconnect. And ultimately what happens is, should something happen, and I don't think anybody wants anything to happen, but should something happen where, somebody has to defend someone, what are you going to do? Look at the girl and say, hey, Sally, you pulled out my chair. Do you think you could take care of the guy that's trying to rob us? I think she's going to look at the guy and be like, sir, you're the man here. Are you going to defend us? And I think if that remains to be the case, then we have to assume the gender roles that we have. Now, if she's going to grab, her pocketbook and pull out a 9mm and say, get down, son, I got this, then, you probably picked the wrong one or the right one, depending on what you're into. But my point is, I think ultimately we all have a job to do. And if we all did it, we'd get along a lot better, at least in my twisted world, Jennifer Styers. So we're going to come right back with Jennifer Styers, and we're going to continue our discussion on the modern dating scene and a couple of other things. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. We continue our discussion with Jennifer Styers. She is a dating and relationship coach, and Jennifer Styers, listen to this. There's some new data from the Gallup organization, the polling organization, that shows that married adults in the United States are 16% more likely to be thriving than those who never married in 2023. Married adults are also more likely to be thriving than divorced adults or those who lived with a domestic partner. So apparently there is a serious advantage to being married. On a scale of 0 to 10, Gallup poll classified that those who rated their current lives at a 7 or an 8 or more 5 years down the road are considering themselves to be thriving, to still be thriving, 5 years down the road. So interesting data in this poll. Jennifer Styers, does this surprise you?
A little bit. In this economy, not surprising at all. But having said that, yeah, a little bit. I always look at statistics, Rich, in a different way because, what does thriving mean? Does that mean financially? Does that mean in life? Does that mean happiness? Because it can mean a lot of different things. I think people are more content when they're married. There's a sense of security and safety. Obviously, the financial, burden is lifted having two people, as well as raising kids and all that. Are they happier? I don't know. Statistics say so, but I don't know. Right? And that's not. It's an answer, but I just have to say I'm not sure that I'm much of a believer in that. I think there's more accountability in a marriage, unlike singles can do whatever they want. They may not eat the healthiest. They may not have the healthiest lifestyle because of the fact that they are just taking care of themselves and they have nobody else to think about. So I think all of those things can contribute. Are they happier? I don't know.
Yeah, well, what it says here, it says the higher well-being of married adults compared to those who never married applied to men and women across major racial ethnic groups. Marriage's impact on well-being for U.S. adults also appeared unaffected by education level and age, according to the poll. So these groups were divided into divorced adults and those in a domestic partnership. Married adults aged 25 to 50 were also 16% more likely to rate themselves as what they consider to be thriving compared to the divorced adults in 2023, and 13% more likely to do so than those in domestic partnerships at 48%. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. You can slice and dice any statistic and to make it look how you want it to look. But it doesn't surprise me in so much as everything you just said. I think people in marriages tend to be just a little bit more secure, a little bit more stable. There's a lot of tax breaks. There's a lot of benefit, I think, to being married still. And that alone, I think, adds that a little bit of a layer of support to keeping things around, but not enough to keep every marriage together for sure. I think with that comes, kind of what we talked about in our last segment is people actually communicating and picking the right people and making sure that they're, healed or working on healing, insecure attachment styles and things of that nature. What are some of the things that you run into or that you counsel the people that come to you for matchmaking and dating advice?
Well, it's interesting when you start breaking these things up, because I think the one thing that we're looking at, we're 2024, we had Corona 2020. A lot of people took stock of their lives at that point. I think we're looking at we're looking at completely different statistics now than we were looking at before. But you see a lot of people that are happily married that would say they're thriving. But if you ask them, are they in love? I don't know. That's where I feel like the line may be drawn in the sand, because I don't know what the answer is to that. I'm a counselor, so I tend to also, I may be skewed because I tend to get the people that may not be or not in happy marriages. But I do think that a lot of people after 2020 have taken stock of their life, especially men are showing up becoming much more emotionally intelligent, doing counseling, getting past their stuff, getting through their stuff, knowing what they want, and having happier relationships. So I think we're on a good trajectory. How about that?
All right. I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit when we come back. Folks, we're on with Jennifer Styers, dating and relationship coach. She's the host of the Loveability podcast. Make sure you check that out. Coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And Jennifer Styers, dating and relationship coach, the host of the Loveability podcast. Are you getting jaded by the marriage scene, or do you feel that people just aren't interested in getting married, or do you still see the value in people getting married?
Okay, is it me or the trend? Because the trend is moving toward not being married. As a matchmaker, the majority of people, men and women that come to me, that are in their 50s or 60s, are not really looking. Very small percentage really want to get married again.
Huh.
Yeah.
And now, do you think that's because, well, again, I mean, just using myself as a case study, right? I'm 45. I was married for 10 years. And after that, so I got divorced in my 30s, got married in my 20s. And when I got divorced in my 30s, I said, you know what? I'm likely never going to get married again. And I did never get married again to date. I just became open to the idea that maybe I would get married again in 2022, let's just say, maybe 2023-ish. So I understand that, because a lot of people are like, man, after that divorce, I'll never do that again. But the reality is, as you get older, you realize that there's benefit to marriage, and I think it kind of works out. So do you think that it's because people haven't had enough time? Maybe they're still bitter from their divorce, like I was? What do you think?
I think it's a lot of reasons. I think, of course, it's, financial. When, people have been successful, and it depends on what state you live in, but they don't want to have to go through, sharing of finances or the potential of another divorce and splitting great assets if that they have them. I think finances are a big reason with people, which is sad. And I think the other piece of it too is that just people are comfortable single. Lots of people had hard times getting divorces and don't want to go through a divorce again. And once kids are raised, they go, what do I need it for? Right?
Yeah. Now, Jennifer Styers, with the 30 seconds we have remaining, I want to make sure people have a chance to follow the work that you're doing. Give them your website. Let them know how they could follow you.
I am at lovejen.com. And Lovey app is our new matchmaking app. So
check out the app, folks. The Lovey app, the website, LoveGen. That's a Jen with 2 N's. LoveGen.com. Jennifer Styers, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet, folks. Open Phone America is coming up right now. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday edition of the program, hour number 3. This is the third hour, and again, we take calls all night long. Just because you don't call doesn't mean we're not taking them. But you're welcome to call in this third hour, and we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Again, the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And some of the things we're going to talk about here, one of them is a little quick factoid in history. In 1794, today in 1794, I should say, George Washington, then president, signed legislation forbidding slave trading with foreign countries. So there's that. And let's see here. We've got a few stories here. A survey finds that Americans are struggling to differentiate fact from opinion. Duh. That's been going on forever. Thank you, CNN and MSNBC. Que mala eres. Kamala Harris visits Puerto Rico for the first time. And I saw a really interesting video of that. We have the audio. We'll get it to you in a little bit. Let's see. Truth Social is going public. That's President Trump's social media company. And let's see. What else do we have here? We have Kate Middleton. She is Princess Kate, as I understand it. She has announced that she has cancer. I wish her the best. Another Republican bites the dust, resigning in April. Marjorie Taylor Greene has filed a motion to vacate Speaker Johnson. And Representative Bob Good, chairman of the House, I think it's the Freedom Caucus, he says no, he's not sure. He's not going to be voting for that, or he's not committed to voting for anything just yet. And here's a big story. Listen to this. February has set the record for illegal immigration. Just shy of 190,000 people have rushed across the border. Now, you heard the video yesterday that we played for you, the audio where they crashed through the barbed wire and made it to the larger metal barrier. This is just a drop in the bucket compared to what's happened on a monthly basis at the southern border. Absolute crazy town is what's going on. And this new monthly record for illegal border crossers was set at the U.S.-Mexico border in February. The figure now eclipses last February's record of 166,000. And that was set in, the year before, in 2022, and 156,000 in 2023. The tallies include Border Patrol apprehensions and encounters at 40 official ports of entry, but does not include an estimate of the number of migrants who cross the southern border undetected. A total of 70 migrants on the FBI terror watch list have attempted to enter the country illegally thus far this fiscal year, which started just on October 1st, including 11 just last month in February. Then we've got the northern border, which is also being used because there's too much traffic at the southern border, where they've had a total of 256,000 border encounters in February. That's up by roughly 13,000 from the prior month. So thank you, Joe El Baboso Biden. And we know that when things get busy at either of these borders, Joe Biden will fly in 320,000 of them on planes at your expense, right? At my expense, at our expense, taxpayer expense. Really, it really is just a horrible, horrible thing. Now, again, I want to hit the phones and get some reaction from the callers. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to our good friend, longtime caller and friend of the program, Gil in Manila, Philippines. Gil, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, Rich.
Hola.
A couple of things to talk about. The Mexican presidential election is coming up in just a couple of months, and it's shaping up to be one of a kind. The leading candidate is a woman. That'll be the first woman president of Mexico, and she's also Jewish.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not the Jewish woman. I saw that. She seems to be a heck of a candidate.
Yeah, she's a scientist, researcher. She has a PhD, and she had the same job as Andres Manuel López Obrador had. That was the head of the Mexico City government. She was head of, so she's with the same group of people, and she seemed to be a shoo-in. And of course, our relationship with Mexico, we're just talking about illegal immigration. What they do has an awful lot to do what happens over here. And I'm hoping that President Trump will open up a good line of communication, that they understand each other, because these waves of caravans and migration that come through Mexico affect them, and it's a big mess, our immigration problem. And
listen,
one other
I
thing,
think you're spot on. Before you move on, Gil, I just wanted to ask you something, because there was this video that came out yesterday, and it was of a bunch of migrants, I don't know, it looked like 50, 60, maybe 100 of them, that rushed this barrier that was made of barbed wire, trampled over the National Guard that was there, and then went to the next line of defense, which is a more secure fence. I don't know if they got through that one or not. The video ends when they get there, but it was a more secure fence. It wasn't easy for them to get through. They were kind of banging on it. And my thinking is that this is something that's not even being paid attention to by the White House. Gil, I don't know if you heard this, but the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, she was at the White House press briefing like usual, and she was asked if she'd heard from President Biden about, these migrants surging past the National Guard. And she says, look, I haven't even spoken to him about that. Listen to this real quick.
Has the president seen that dramatic video of migrants surging past National Guardsmen in Texas and in El Paso?
I mean, look, I have not spoken to the president about that video. What I can say is this. I really, truly believe that's a question for, the Republican governor of Texas, right? This is something that he should address, that he should actually speak to.
Gil, I mean, you're talking about how things are so difficult and what's happening in Mexico, and she's saying, go talk to Greg Abbott. What do you think about that?
Well, they passed that law that would allow the Texas law enforcement and Texas judges to apprehend illegal immigrants and boot them out of the country. So he's already done it, and they're trying to overturn that law. It's in the courts right now on appeal.
Yeah, I think that the gall of Karine Jean-Pierre to say, look, the president's not going to deal with any immigration questions about these videos where people are just storming the border. You go ahead and talk to Abbott. And I think it's just a classic case of passing the buck. And I know that you wanted to make another comment. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about ISIS because we had a war here with ISIS about 8 years ago called Murtaugh when President Trump was in power. And they scare the people here quite a bit because they fight till the last life and the last bullet. They don't surrender. And that's how they went down. And people like that who are willing to die for either a political or a religious belief. I was in the military for 15 years. They have my respect. If I'm against them on the battlefield, they would have my respect.
As a formidable adversary.
Yes. The other thing is, if I can make another comparison, the former president here who's a friend of mine, President Duterte, he came under a lot of criticism because he went after drug trafficking, saying that people who get young people addicted to drugs are a worse enemy than people who try to take over the country because of a political or religious belief. They're only doing it for money. They're not doing it for any kind of a higher calling. So you heard the rantings of an old man on this Saturday afternoon here, and I want to thank you for putting up with me. I've been around a long time.
Well, Gil, it's nothing to put up with. It's an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate it, and I think you're right. At least your friend, the president, he's on to something. You have to go after the drug addicts, the drug dealers, because otherwise you'll end up with a nation of drug addicts. And this is what we're facing here, right? It's what's happening in the United States. Forgive me. We see the influx of fentanyl, and if it's not killing people, they're becoming addicted to it. It's absolutely crazy, and I think we need a change desperately. Gil in Manila, Philippines, thank you for your call, my brother. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Hope you have a great weekend. And, folks, we continue with the rest of your calls and more. Plus, Kamala Harris, the vice president. She made her way to Puerto Rico. We're going to talk about that. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So Joe Scarborough on The Morning Joke, he is a host on MSNBC. He actually blamed the illegal immigrant crisis, the chaos that we're seeing at the border. He blamed it on Trump. I mean, I think it's absolutely crazy. And he's, of course, holding up today's copy of the New York Post, which has a headline that says Onslaught, which is a screen grab from the video that we're all talking about, where they rushed the border and nearly trampling these National Guardsmen. Listen to this. 14.
I would carry this around because see this Onslaught headline? The only thing the Post didn't tell you is Donald Trump said, blame me for this. Donald Trump said, kill the bill and blame me for everything that happens after this point. Donald Trump said, blame me. So, yes, Donald, we are blaming you. We're blaming Mini-Me Mike Johnson for following your orders. We're blaming Republicans who begged for a tough border bill, but like the Wall Street Journal editorial page said, couldn't take yes for an answer. So, yes, there is an onslaught in the southern border still. And it's all Donald Trump's fault. You know who says that? Donald Trump. Donald Trump says blame him for this. So we will.
You know, it amazes me that Mr. Scarborough served in Congress. It amazes me that Mr. Scarborough is an attorney. It amazes me that Mr. Scarborough's been on TV for a very long time, and he's still able to come up with these incoherent ideas. And he doesn't know the difference between, the tone when Trump is saying, "Go ahead, blame me. I'm the bad guy." Sure. Yeah. I mean, really. I mean, at some point we have to really take an accounting here and say, Mr. Scarborough, what is wrong with you, sir? What is wrong with you? Trump hasn't been president in 4 years. Just because he goes and facetiously says, hey, blame me for what's going on there, that doesn't mean we can really blame him. Nobody in their right mind could blame anybody but Joe Biden. The buck stops with him. Maybe I'm making this up. I don't know. Let's go to Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Paul, what are your thoughts on what Mr. Scarborough is saying here on the Morning Joke?
Well, what an idiot. What don't they blame on Trump? I mean, the next thing will be climate change. Oh, that's Trump's fault. Come on. But I just don't believe people blaming all this on that man, and this is horrible that Letitia James can do this to him. It's a political wash on their side. They're trying, that didn't come out right. They're just trying to kill him politically because they don't like the man on that. Now, but I had two other things to comment on real quick, if I could.
Yeah. I think we have a minute and a half, so if you don't get it in, I'll hold you over. But go ahead.
Well, the first thing, talking about the relationships and things like that. Now, I got a 19-year-old grandson that just, got his first apartment. I'm proud of him.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But he, they text so much. They don't talk to people face to face, telephone to telephone like this. And I think that's a lot of the disconnect. You talked about that earlier in your program when you was talking with one of your guests. By the way, excellent show, as usual.
Thank you.
But that was my first one. And then the second one was on what are going to be the repercussions of all these illegal immigrants coming in if Trump don't get in there and deport them? Because I heard a guy today on Newsmax say that, hey, I think he was from Venezuela. Let's take over all these empty homes and so forth. We can just move in, And I was like, are you serious? What's going to be the repercussions? The drugs they're bringing in and everything? I mean, we're just going to have a society that's out of control. And I just like your thoughts, Rich. And by the way, have a nice weekend. And I love your show.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I always appreciate speaking with you. Big shout out to everybody on WHIZ. So, Paul, here's my thought on everything. Number one, I think this guy that you're talking about, he's like a bald-headed or short hair crew cut kind of guy that is talking about squatting and taking over people's homes. This guy is in for a world of hurt. And I'll finish my response on the other side because this is actually something we talked about on my podcast, This is America with Rich Valdez. If you're not subscribed and you haven't heard it this week, you definitely should. Folks, we're coming right back. Paul, I'll continue my answer to you on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. It's Open Phone America with me, Rich Valdez. Your calls and more coming up right now.
With Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation. I was answering Paul's question. Again, my opinion on what he spoke about. What are the repercussions for this particular person that he saw on Newsmax? And again, I played that audio clip on my podcast, This is America with Rich Valdez. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. But he's basically saying, listen, keep coming. Don't let the news deter you. If you're in Venezuela, come, because the United States owes you. And they will not let you fail, and you will not be homeless, and you'll not live on the street. Matter of fact, there's a bunch of empty homes here. We can take them over. There's all sorts of laws that if you live in it long enough, you can keep it. And he says, we're going to invade these homes. And he goes, hold on, let me clarify and say we're going to expropriate these homes. I mean, he's very fresh. He's very, very forward, very in your face. And I think that things are going to be ugly for him when he goes into the wrong home. That's just my belief. I know there's a lot of very pacifistic Americans out there that are looking to allow people to push them around, and that's fine for them. But there's a bunch of people that are not going to let people push them around. There's a bunch of people that are going to stand up for their property. And when this poor guy, encounters that person that's willing to do what they've got to do to defend what's theirs, I think he's going to really be in for a surprise, because I think right now he's just getting away with it, and he's talking slick because he doesn't there's no repercussion. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be right or wrong, and I'm not calling for any threats on this guy. I'm just saying I think somebody's going to kick his butt, personally. He's a big, popular YouTuber, Venezuelan guy that talks about this, as far as I can see. And we'll continue to monitor his TikTok account to see what type of smack he's talking. But I want to quickly play for you the audio clip of Que Mala Eres, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, visiting Puerto Rico. Listen to this.
Queremos saber, Kamala, que es lo que viniste a hacer.
Now, that is a band of people outside, and it's tradition in Puerto Rico for people to sing songs, and they have these caravans of caroling during Christmas, but this is not that. This is actually mocking Kamala Harris, and she had no idea. She actually stopped and started clapping and dancing in place, and she was enjoying it as if she was being serenaded, but she was not. No, Kamala Harris, you were not being serenaded. They were asking you, we want to know, what did you tell him? And the him being Pierre Luisi, the governor of Puerto Rico. They were critics of his, and since she was meeting, they wanted to know what the discussion was about. And again, so they could protest, and that's what they were doing. It was a peaceful protest, if you will, and they were playing music, but it was to activate the mood, right? It was not any type of praise for Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States. And I thought that was really, really funny, because I don't think she had any idea until later that, if at all, maybe, one of her staffers is hearing what we're talking about and saying, oh, my goodness, yeah, I think they were making fun of us. And they definitely were. So that part of it is humorous, to say the least. Now, Puerto Rico isn't on the 2024 election map, but Biden is trying to ingratiate himself with Puerto Rican voters by making these trips and having Kamala Harris go out there. Again, that video that you heard was from earlier today. The vice president highlighted how the Biden administration had invested more than $140 billion in Puerto Rico to improve infrastructure, support clean energy, and increase access to capital for small businesses. She visited a home outside San Juan to show how a program funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development is helping to rebuild and repair homes, saying, I think it's critically important to remember that this island is home to some of the most talented and innovative people in our nation, said Vice President Harris, who visited Puerto Rico as a senator last in 2017. And I'm just glad she didn't, go on one of those circuitous statements where she says something like, it's important to remember that this island is home to some of the most talented people in our nation, people that have talent that live in America, which is our nation, because they're talented. Things that she likes to do when she gets into those little word salad moments. So the administration is trying to sell this as accomplishments in Puerto Rico on the political grounds to try and get some clout ahead of what's expected to be a tight presidential race. The crucial swing state of Pennsylvania has is the third largest population of Puerto Ricans in the United States, about 500,000, trailing behind Florida and New York. And when they say Florida, they mean Orlando. Orlando's like a suburb of Puerto Rico. It's like saying New York City. So interesting what went on today with Kamala Harris. And it's funny that none of her aides stopped to tell her, no, they're questioning you, ma'am. She thought they were singing her a cute song. Anyway, we continue with your calls and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Let me see. Where do we go here? We're going to go to Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go right ahead.
Well, I want to congratulate you on being such a wonderful patriot and always getting really interesting information. How dare they blame Trump for this? They can blame the drooling one, as you call Biden. I like that.
El baboso.
And, El baboso. He definitely is. The whole liberal philosophy is that the first world has been imperialist and colonized the third world, and therefore we owe our land and everything to the third world. And, when Trump was trying to clamp down on the border and have remain in Mexico, the left was screeching that he's separating families and putting kids in cages and firing tear gas at people. And they fought him at every turn in his effort to secure our border. So how dare they blame this on him? It's disgusting.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I think it's misplaced blame when Biden literally reversed every last policy that was actually working, like the Remain in Mexico policy, ending catch and release, and just allowing the men and women of the Border Patrol to do their actual jobs. Now, with respect to Que Mala Eres, the Vice President of the United States, what are your thoughts on her visit and actually getting mocked by these protesters, posing as singers?
Well, I say good one for those protesters. It's kind of like their version of Let's Go Brandon. And I say, hey, congratulations. And if she and her staffers are that clueless, for all their multiculturalism, they obviously, no one's speaking Spanish on our staff. I mean, and no one seems to know the culture down there and realize that, no, they're actually mocking you. So much for cultural sensitivity. It's kind of bit them in the butt.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sarah. Thank you for your kind words and for your call. I always appreciate hearing from you. We continue. Let's go to Andy. Andy's calling from Auburn, New York, WAUB. Andy, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, well, that's a pretty good imitation of Kamala Harris. I don't know why she does that. I think she's an intelligent woman. You'd think she'd get a good publicity campaign that tells her, just talk facts and reason. We don't need poetry. Anyway.
Well, that makes one of us, right? One of us that thinks she's an intelligent person. Andy, what's on your mind?
I'll start by saying I'm a liberal, okay? And I'm voting Biden, and I don't care if his aides have to prop him up and maneuver him like a marionette. If he's that old or that senile, I don't care. I'm an environmentalist, and I find Republican environmental policies abhorrent. So I'm always going to be liberal. That said, I listen to right-wing radio because I want to hear the strongest argument on both sides. Give it your best shot. Try to convince me. And I really would recommend that to all of you Republicans out there. Go listen to NPR. Try to listen to the best arguments. Don't just let your echo chambers give you straw men and beat them down and feel so proud of yourself because you beat down a straw man. Go listen to the strongest argument from your opponents in the political realm. That said, this southern border thing, I mean, one thing that drives me nuts about my fellow liberals is if Trump says it's 3 in the afternoon, we have to jump up and say it's 3 in the morning, even if he just looked at his watch. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He has to be wrong, not just wrong, but evil about everything. And not every Republican idea or thought is evil and wrong. You take it as an idea. Forget who it's coming from and say, does this make sense? Because how many millions of people can come into a community before it's like
before
a life
it breaks?
raft?
Yeah, I'm with you, Andy. And I miss liberals like you, honestly. I listen to tons of NPR, especially on Saturdays, and I get some of my best inspiration from hearing the arguments that they make. And that's why if you listen to this program, I don't know if you've listening if you've listened before, if you're an avid listener every night. But I try my best to play 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes of whatever, Biden or whoever the subject is from the left to play exactly what they said in the full context of their statement before I give you my my opinions and thoughts on that, so that we're having some sort of dialogue. They won't accept my invitations, lamentably, to come on the program, but I try to, for the audience's benefit, that they can hear exactly what they were saying before I, pounce on them with my echo chamber talking points, right? And I think that's important because you want to at least give them a fighting chance to make their argument. And I think on the other side, I never turn on NPR and hear a clip of Trump unless it's, a clip that's being drastically taken out of context. And those are few and far between because he's a pretty careful guy when it comes to saying things. Even when he's being reckless, I think he's being careful. So I do appreciate everything you said, and definitely will be listening to NPR to make some of those arguments as we encounter them. Andy in Auburn, New York, WAUB. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. And folks, we pause right here. We come back with the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
Do you worry that too many people have lost the ability to listen in this country?
Yes.
And where does that leave us?
Bad.
Mm-hmm. What does that potentially mean for the state of this country's democracy?
Okay, look, there are two sides to many things. One, you say the United States of America. Hey, this is in part the United States of America. So the United States of America, we used to think, and I still think, that maybe we're not listening as much as we should.
That's former Supreme Court Justice Breyer on Meet the Press, which will be out this Sunday. That's a little advanced sneak peek. And he's saying that the Constitution is in part in the United States here because people have lost the ability to listen in this country. And it leaves us in a bad place. Now, while these seem to be simple things, I think he's right. I think that's true. There are people that have lost the ability to listen. Not everybody, but a good amount of people. I think there's also people that are willing to listen to just about anything. And I don't want you to listen to me or anybody else without being skeptical, right? Again, the reason why I try to give you the full context of these clips so that you can say, oh, you know what, that makes a lot more sense than this guy Valdez. All right, then listen to that guy, right? But ultimately, we have to make our minds up on certain things, and we have to form opinions about things so we understand what's going on in our country, in our society. And I don't typically agree with Breyer, and I don't agree with everything he's saying here, but I think ultimately when he says, look, there's two sides to many things. One, he said, the United States Constitution, this is important. So the United States of America, we used to think, and I still think that maybe we're not listening as much as we should. I agree with him. The Constitution is important, and we're not listening. Now, whatever context he means it in, and I would take that as, I think he's speaking as a former Supreme Court justice, right? Saying, the Constitution is important and we have to pay attention, even though he was very liberal. Ultimately, we have to, I think it's important to listen, right? You do have to listen. Whether you agree or not is a different story, but you have to listen to what the other side is saying so that we can actually have a dialogue. Speaking of dialogue, I want to get to you all. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Go right ahead.
Hey, that liberal you had on a little bit ago, he pretty intelligent conversation until he got the part about bragging on Kamala Harris. You know, she ain't got two brain cells to rub together.
It's my sentiment.
But I'm going to tell you who I like. I really like. You started off with Tim Murtaugh.
Oh yeah,
that guy. Kudos to him for overcoming alcoholism, and to you for putting him on. I got to thinking he would make a good little story for Lee Habib. Now, I don't have email and stuff, but boy, if you could put a word to him to consider his story, he could narrate it himself. That's a good story, what happened to him and where he is today.
I agree. And I think it's a worthwhile book to grab. Joe, thank you for the call and your kind words. I appreciate it. Paul and Jeff are coming your way right after this. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. You know, people listening, right? But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And again, I am truly blessed to have this amazing audience. I never take it for granted. I'm very grateful. I really am, for each and every one of you that listens across the country. Got hundreds of radio stations carrying this program, millions of people that are tuned in live and as well as some on delay, and just truly grateful. Let's go to Wyoming. Jeff in Powell, Wyoming on KPOW. Jeff, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. And I'm flashing back. I didn't realize there was the time delay, but I was blessed. I was born to a veteran of World War II, and there's 30 miles of homesteads that were let to veterans from World War II. But about the lady thing and opening a door, tipping your hat, like I never thought that was anything disallowing or disrespecting them. It was just out of respect. Because my mother could always fire up the tractor, plow, hook up to a farm wagon, do anything that my dad could do, but she still kind of wanted me to hold the door for her and show her respect.
Yeah, well, she sounds like a real lady, and I'm happy to hear that, and I appreciate the call, and love to hear from folks in Wyoming. Jeff in Powell, Wyoming, KPOW, Godspeed to you. And, of course, I'm tipping my hat to the woman that your mom is. Thank you for that. And let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, listening online. We got a big affiliate over there, KBOI. Oh, Paul, quickly, go for it. You got 20 seconds.
Okay, the call letters are BSDNC.
Not MSNBC, but BSDNC. That's funny. Great one. Paul, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Have an amazing weekend, folks. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless. I am Rich Valdez. We'll do it all again on Monday, God willing.